Dr. Piot, who co-discovered Ebola virus, told me about his personal fight against COVID-19 today as the special advisor to the President of the European Council. Stay tuned. This is World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. Widespread coronavirus infections in parts of the world have proven just how vulnerable people exposed to it are. Even those who dedicated their lives to studying viruses can fall victim to it. Dr. Piot, the special advisor on COVID-19 to the European Commission president, contracted the coronavirus in March last year and suffered a long COVID for 5 months. He spent his whole career chasing viruses. He was with the team who first discovered Ebola, and he has led global efforts to fight HIV/AIDS for 2 decades. In an exclusive interview recently, Dr. Piot shares his thoughts on how we should prepare for future pandemics and his painful personal story of surviving COVID. Let's listen. I'm honored to be joined by Peter Piot, a special advisor on COVID-19 to the European Commission president, and also director of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, one of the giants of Ebola and AIDS research in the world. Peter, what a pleasure to see you once again.
Nice to see you again, Yang, after last year in Davos.
I know, I miss you and also Mrs. Piot. Let's jump in directly to the questions. What about vaccinations? Are they going to be sufficient, Peter?
Vaccinations are necessary but may not be sufficient. First of all, we need to make sure that the whole world is vaccinated. Because when it comes to a pandemic like COVID, it's not over until it's over everywhere. Otherwise, we will constantly have re-importation of cases into country. Take China, we've been very successful in bringing the epidemic under control, but it can start again anytime. So that's why vaccines are absolutely essential. And I think we are up to a good start. It's fantastic that, the world could develop vaccines in less than a year. Chinese companies also, Western companies, Indian companies, just name it. And that's going to make a huge difference. And without a vaccine, we won't be able to make it. However, we will also need to continue to be careful and to be very vigilant to make sure that whenever there is a case, that we immediately act to prevent them to spread in the population.
Yeah. Peter, earlier, you located and co-discovered the virus of Ebola. Have you ever imagined that we will be now challenged by an even bigger global pandemic like COVID-19?
Actually, for many years, I had a speech that was called, "Are we ready for the next pandemic?" Because I was convinced, just like some other colleagues like Dr. Fauci or Bill Gates, that we will have another epidemic sometime. I always thought it would be more of an influenza type of the flu, like we had 100 years ago, when the flu virus changes completely. So that was wrong. It was a coronavirus. And the answer to my speech was at the end was that we are not ready. The world is not ready.
No.
And so I think we will see even more pandemics in the future. When and where they will come and which virus, nobody knows. But why are they always coming? Because they originate in animals, all of them. We don't know yet for sure for COVID-19 where it's coming from, but we know for SARS it's a bat, for Ebola it's also bats, for HIV with chimpanzee, we have in the Middle East with camels and so on. So it's unavoidable that now and then viruses jump from an animal onto humans, and then sometimes they cause an outbreak, an epidemic. That we cannot avoid. What we can avoid is to make sure that it remains local and that it doesn't become a big epidemic, as has been the case with COVID.
But Peter, over the past 2 decades, shall we say, we have noticed a trend, very worrying apparently, that the frequency of a global pandemic, whether it's larger or smaller scale in Ebola's case, for example, is becoming ever more intense. How should we understand this?
Jen, you're absolutely right. I really think we are entering the age of pandemics. And why is that? On the one hand, as I mentioned, these viruses all come from animals in nature or also livestock. Take influenza, it's often birds, poultry, but it can also be pigs. So that is always there, but the world population is growing and growing in most places. So the pressure on animals and on nature is getting bigger. Yeah. Also, climate change makes it that we are destroying nature, and then that we are in more intense contact with animals that were living in the wild, and they could infect us. And then let's not forget that the world is far more mobile than before. What is a local outbreak in the past, today, overnight, someone can fly to the other side of the world and start an epidemic there. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's not bad, but that's the way that we are now living in this globalized world. And that's why we have to be far more vigilant, be better prepared, making sure we have early detection, that we have public health systems, so that we can act early, because acting early is absolutely the key. Hence the title of my book, my memoir, is No Time to Lose. No time to lose. When you see the beginning of an epidemic, you act.
There are so many aspects about the pandemic that we have a lot of thoughts about, but also a lot of questions that we don't know. In fact, it's a process of discovering the things that we don't know, for example, about the spread of the virus, the origins of the virus, the mutation of the virus, and also about vaccination, prevention and control, science and society, you name it, Peter. So many priorities we have to struggle with. It's mind-boggling. I'm sure for scientists, medical scientists like you, it's probably even more. Where shall we begin? Where should we focus our attention on as we move on? This is going to be mind-boggling years to come.
Indeed, I mean, managing uncertainty and the lack of knowledge of this virus has been a big handicap. And so we had to, in the beginning, to act a bit in the dark, but it was successful. And let's not forget, it's now about a year that we know that the virus exists, that it was first sequenced also in China, was shared with the world. And we've made enormous progress. I mean, we have vaccines. This is unheard of. Normally, it takes about 10 years to develop a vaccine. This time, in less than a year, we have vaccines that work and are safe. Both are very important. We've understood that how it's transmitted, but there are still many unanswered questions. For example, as you mentioned, viruses mutate. They change their genome, their constitution, if you want, to escape the immune response. That's how we fight against the viruses. Because what's the purpose in life of a virus? It's to survive, to find other people to infect. And we don't know yet what the meaning is of these mutations. There will be more and more, particularly coming from populations where there are lots of infections. We have now a British variant, a South African, a Brazilian, several American ones, and soon about every country will have it, where you have many infections. And the big question is, will these variants, these mutations, make the vaccines less effective, At the moment, it looks okay, but one day there may be a very nasty variant that escapes it. So we need to be prepared for that. So there's still a need for massive research. Also, on the treatment side, treating people with COVID, we've made less progress than I had hoped and less progress than on vaccines.
Yes, indeed.
So we need a lot of research continuing there. And the actual origin, if we ever will know, it's not yet clear. Why is that important? It's important to be prepared for the next epidemic and to be more vigilant. And when it comes to epidemics, we should not only think of us humans, people, but also of animals. We call that One Health, animals and people together, because it jumps over from animals. So we need to know what's going on in animals. And that's what's being done for influenza. For influenza, scientists follow infections in birds, mortality also in poultry, etc. So we need a system that is doing the same thing for coronaviruses.
Now, Peter, we know there was a dirty political fight earlier for the year 2020 about the origin of the virus. And, now WHO has been sending teams to different parts of the world, China included, for research about origins of the virus. To scientists like you, what do you think are some of the most important steps to know more about the virus origin? And would we ever be able to understand really where exactly started?
Well, based on the genome, the genetic signature or an identity of the virus, it probably is coming from some kind of bat. It's just like other coronaviruses causing SARS and so on. And it will be a matter of luck to find out where, and one day we probably will find. What happened exactly, I'm not sure we will ever find out. I'm looking forward to read the conclusions of the WHO, investigations, but they may not find a definite solution.
Yeah.
I'm mostly interested in, in knowing exactly how did it, how can we stop it?
I know you, sadly, was also contracted with COVID-19 earlier, but you survived, and now today, look at you, survived and thrived, still thriving.
Yes.
Wonderful news.
Yes.
But, tell me more about your personal stories, how you were, struggling with this COVID-19. What does that mean to you as a scientist to understand better about really what's happening?
Yeah, after having fought viruses my whole life, and I'd never been seriously sick, I'm 71 now, and I was quite healthy. Last year in March, I suddenly became ill in the very early days, at least in Europe, of this epidemic, and developed serious, very splitting headache, fever. Did not cough and so on, but I'm very tired, and I thought, okay, I got it, and indeed my PCR test was positive, so I had the virus, but I thought, okay, I'm a healthy man, I run every morning 5 kilometers, and so I have a healthy lifestyle. However, on the 1st of April, I had to be admitted to the hospital because my fever went worse. I could really hardly get out of bed, and I needed oxygen. And because I was very low on oxygen saturation, and it's oxygen that really saved my life. I was in the hospital for about 8 days, and but I developed also atrial fibrillation. So in other words, my heart was affected.
No.
And then afterwards, when I came back home and I thought, okay, it's fine, I survived. I developed like a chronic lung problem.
Oh my God.
I started having coughing and being short of breath, and that took about 5 months to fully resolve. I was particularly very tired, but now I'm fine. I'm really fully recovered, just that I need a bit more sleep than usual. I need 8, 9 hours sleep a night, which is very new to me. I used to not need much sleep because I'm a workaholic. I work all the time. And but that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
You need good sleep is good for your health.
I saw your
So
photos
I'm
of that time. You lost a lot of weight at that time. I'm sure you've been trying to recover with your utmost strength, and you're looking terrific.
Thank you very much.
Are you still jogging?
Yes, yes, every morning. That's how I start.
Amazing.
Sometimes the weather is a bit too bad here, but but that took, it took a while. First, I could only do maybe a kilometer, so it was, But now my strength is back, and I need that because here we all work from home. I sit all day doing conference calls and stand. So we need movement, exercise to remain healthy.
I think I see a lot of vitalities and persistence in you. Peter, great job. Having said that, though, as a scientist, how do you see your own personal experience? What does it tell you about this virus, about COVID-19, and about this global pandemic, which is still continuing?
No, it changes your view on viruses. Up to now, I was an expert from outside and fighting them, but now I had the virus in me, inside.
But then
And
from
in
now
my
on,
mother
please
tongue-
remain an expert from outside, okay?
Yes. But I had the experience. So I'm now in my mother tongue, my language, which is Dutch. I'm Flemish from Belgium, and so we call that an experience expert, not only a theoretical expert. And I felt a few lessons. One, that this virus is not just affecting the lungs or the respiratory, because it's respiratory transmitted. No, it affects every single part of your body. And that's something we didn't know in the beginning. Today we know. Secondly, it's not just that some people have very mild disease or nothing, symptomatic, and then others, particularly when you're older, you can die and are in intensive care. But there's also something in between, and that there is this what we call now long COVID. So people will suffer for many, many months from debilitating fatigue and heart problems, kidney problems, lung problems, brain having difficulty in thinking clearly. That's the second lesson, and now that's known, but in the beginning it was not known. And thirdly, of course, this is about people. I came out in the media already in May, because I felt that all the government communication here in Europe was about statistics and not about people. And this is about people. When we had 100,000 deaths now in the UK, 100,000 people who died. I mean, that's 100,000 people who were alive, who have loved ones, family, and so on. And it's not just statistics. That's really important. But on the other hand, I'm more determined than ever to fight the virus and to make sure that as few people as possible get infected and die.
Peter, if you got an opportunity, I know you've been doing a lot of advice for both the European Council President and also providing your advice and suggestions to your colleagues, including Dr. Fauci, Mr. Gates, and many others. What do you think are the things that we really need to do now? Besides, words like cooperation, what do we need to do now to prepare for the fact that we will not be able to deal with COVID-19 within 1 year or two if you look at the rollout of the vaccine, but much longer term?
Well, first of all, I think rolling out vaccines, making sure there's enough manufactured and that everybody has access to it is a top priority. I hope, I should say, that we all have learned our lesson. that we cannot afford to be complacent and that we need to put in place the systems. It's like we all have fire brigades in case a house is in fire. And, you know, we don't set up the fire brigade when the house starts burning. No, we have to do it in between. And we all hope that the fire brigade will never have to work.
Dr. Piot, the special advisor to the European Union President on COVID-19. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to search World Inside, the name of the program, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us, Twitter, Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching and stay safe wherever you are. Bye for now.